Imagine this. The company behind Mario, Zelda, and Pokémon didn't start with video games at all. Nintendo began in 1889 Japan, making hand-painted playing cards. And before they became the kings of gaming, they tried running a taxi service, selling instant rice, and even, according to rumors, experimenting with love hotels. That's right, the same company that gave us family-friendly Mario Kart once considered something very different. So how did Nintendo go from painted cards and oddball side hustles to building one of the most beloved entertainment empires on the planet? This story has twists, flops, rivalries, and comebacks you won't believe.
The unlikely beginnings, cards, taxis, and odd ventures. It all starts with Fusajiro Yamauchi in Kyoto, Japan. His company, Nintendo Kopai, made beautiful Hanafuda playing cards that quickly became popular. For decades, Nintendo thrived as the dominant card company in Japan. But under Hiroshi Yamauchi, the company started taking risks. They tried a taxi service, a TV network, instant rice, and, according to rumor, even love hotels. None of these ideas stuck. But the experiments built Nintendo's reputation for risk-taking. Nintendo was about to gamble again, this time on a new kind of toy. And that gamble would change their destiny forever.
The breakthrough, Donkey Kong and the birth of Mario. By the late 1970s and early 80s, Nintendo turned to arcade games. They needed a hit, and a young designer named Shigeru Miyamoto delivered. His game was Donkey Kong, released in 1981, a carpenter climbing ladders to rescue his girlfriend from a giant ape. The carpenter was first called Jumpman, later renamed Mario after Nintendo of America's landlord, Mario Segale. Donkey Kong was a smash, and Mario became the face of Nintendo. But the real test was coming. The entire video game industry was about to crash, and Nintendo would either save it or sink with it.
Saving the industry, the NES era. In 1983, the video game market crashed. Too many bad games, too many consoles. Customers lost faith. In 1985, Nintendo launched the Nintendo Entertainment System in North America, bundled with Super Mario Bros. It was a massive hit. The NES didn't just succeed, it revived the video game industry. The NES gave us The Legend of Zelda, Metroid, and Castlevania. These weren't just games, they were cultural milestones. But Nintendo wasn't done. Their next invention wouldn't just sit in your living room, it would live in your pocket.
Handheld glory, the Game Boy and Pokémon craze. In 1989, Nintendo released the Game Boy. It looked like a gray brick, but it was revolutionary. Portable gaming was here. With Tetris and later Pokémon, the Game Boy became a worldwide phenomenon. Pokémon especially turned into a cultural craze, giving kids a reason to trade, battle, and dream of catching them all. The Game Boy's durability became legendary. One even survived a Gulf War bombing and still worked. But as Nintendo conquered handhelds, a storm was brewing. A rival was about to challenge Mario head-on, and it would start a war.
Console wars, Sega versus Nintendo in the 90s. The Super Nintendo launched in the early 1990s with impressive 16-bit graphics. But Sega had the Genesis. Suddenly, kids were choosing sides, Mario or Sonic. This rivalry fueled the golden age of gaming. Nintendo delivered classics like Zelda, A Link to the Past, Super Metroid, and Donkey Kong Country. Sega countered with Sonic the Hedgehog. It wasn't just gaming, it was a cultural showdown. And then Nintendo made a decision that would haunt them for decades. A failed partnership with a company called Sony.
Risk and fallout, N64, PlayStation, and GameCube. In 1996, Nintendo launched a Nintendo 64. It pioneered true 3D gameplay with an analog stick. Games like Super Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time became legends. But sticking with cartridges limited storage, and then came the Sony story. Nintendo and Sony had once worked together on a CD-based system. When the deal fell apart, Sony turned its tech into the PlayStation. It became a global powerhouse. Nintendo fought back with the GameCube in 2001. It had incredible games like Smash Bros. Melee and The Wind Waker. But sales lagged behind Sony's PlayStation 2 and Microsoft's Xbox. And as if losing to Sony wasn't enough, Nintendo also launched one of the strangest flops in gaming history. The Virtual Boy and Nintendo's strangest failure. In 1995, Nintendo released the Virtual Boy, an early attempt at virtual reality. Red and black graphics, clunky design, headaches. It was a disaster, discontinued within a year. A complete failure, but it showed Nintendo's willingness to experiment. That same boldness would also lead them to their biggest success yet. The DS Factor, Nintendo's hidden titan. In 2004, the Nintendo DS launched with dual screens and touch controls. At first, people doubted it, but it went on to sell over 150 million units worldwide, becoming Nintendo's best-selling system ever. With games like Brain Age, Nintendogs, and Pokémon, the DS proved Nintendo owned the handheld space like no one else. Which brings us to the big question: what comes next? The Wii phenomenon, gaming for everyone. In 2006, Nintendo launched the Wii. With motion controls and a simple design, it became a console for everyone. Families were bowling in their living rooms, grandparents were playing tennis. The Wii sold over 100 million units, becoming one of the best-selling consoles of all time. It wasn't just a console, it was a cultural phenomenon. But after a meteoric high comes the crash. Nintendo's next console would be its biggest disaster.
The Wii U, confusion and collapse. In 2012, Nintendo released the Wii U with a large gamepad screen controller. But people didn't understand it. Was it an add-on? A new console? Confusion, weak marketing, and few third-party games doomed it. The Wii U became Nintendo's lowest-selling home console, but its lessons would shape the future, because from the ashes of the Wii U rose a console that would redefine gaming once again.
The Switch era, reinvention, and glory. In 2017, Nintendo launched the Switch, a hybrid console you could play on TV or take on the go. It debuted with The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild, a masterpiece of open-world design. Then came Mario Odyssey, Smash Ultimate, and Animal Crossing. The Switch became a global phenomenon, outselling even the Wii and ranking among the best-selling consoles of all time.
Legacy and the future. So, what's Nintendo's secret? Innovation, resilience, and always putting fun first. From playing cards in 1889 to Donkey Kong in the arcades, from handheld Pokémon battles to living room bowling matches to a console you can carry anywhere, Nintendo has faced flops, rivals, and setbacks, but always bounced back stronger. And the future? With Nintendo, you can always expect the unexpected, whether it's a new console, a wild experiment, or another cultural craze. One thing is certain, they'll keep surprising us, delighting us, and reminding us why we love games in the first place. Here's to another century of play.